Hi everyone, it's Zach with Palantir Research. Palantir intentionally did not hire a 1000x engineer back in the day, as well as the myth of work-life balance and many more explained by Shyam Sankar, releasing a huge opinion piece called The Primacy of Winning. Essentially, the message is winning is what matters, but going through the whole show shows why Palantir is the way it is today and how they run their organization. And warning, this is from Shyam Sankar's perspective, of course. I obviously have my own opinions, and so just remember it's from his vantage point, and this is what works for Palantir, and definitely not 100% of everyone else would want the same, at least from a personal workplace perspective. Now, it's quite a read, so take the time to do so when you have a chance, because it gives everyone here an opportunity to see why Palantir's DNA is the way it is. He goes through many examples and, of course, drivers on why Palantir is a successful company today when it comes to winning and making a difference. So he starts out with Missionaries versus Mercenaries. Palantir focuses on getting the missionaries. They want people who are living and breathing the mission and trying to fulfill that. And this is apparent from Palantir's leadership and philosophy, and not a huge stretch to see they'd hire people this way as well down the organization. And this is also the section where we get the 1000x engineer example that was recommended to them early on in their life as a company, where they ultimately decided not to offer him a position because he was a mercenary, doing what's best, not necessarily for the mission itself and putting his all into it. Now, in my own personal opinion and personal life, I completely understand myself as a mercenary, so I wouldn't cut it also at Palantir, but as an owner and investor in the company, it's a no-brainer. I'd want to get missionaries to work for me, but it's hard to attract that kind of talent too without being one yourself, so it's just something to be wary of. And this is a huge clue on their stock-based compensation as well culture today, where they offer lower salaries, but with the potential for higher payoff for those dedicated with equity. So we'll see if that continues to play on and persist over time. Then we got work-life balance being a false choice. Palantir is an intense work environment, and this is no secret, especially for the early stage life too. Sankar basically says if you want to do great things, your life is the work to make things happening. Hence, there's not really a work-life balance here for the outperformers. And he goes through stories of Palantir employees ready to hop on planes and crunching the hours and coding, and they even had the Army reject one of the solutions they put so much time into building due to politics, even though the operators loved it. Then, when they started seeing lots of soldiers losing their lives, the Army basically crawled back to Palantir to help them get their software again. So Palantir had to get right back on the horse because every second costed lives. So this is real work here without necessarily a balance here, because every second is a different life here that can be at stake. So work-life balance, I can see why it's not really part of their culture here, and it's just something to look out for when you're dealing with these kind of problems. Then I think we're all on the same page too here. Real growth will never not be painful. Essentially, they put their employees on the deep end and in the fire here because that's how they grow. You aren't growing if you're not uncomfortable from time to time. And they probably do this a lot more often than other companies, of course. And this is kind of how Palantir deals with problems that aren't being solved. They know this isn't a blueprint, so forging one themselves is going to be painful no matter what because you're figuring it out. And for their work, too, they know employees who embrace this have moved up throughout the organization, like Khan Tasinga, as well as Mark Sciano, who we've seen from time to time pop up in the channel. Then we get to the point of this all, is that you're managing the geniuses and the cream of the crop. You're creating an artist colony, not a factory. So you can't just put the high performers and creative individuals in a box and just crank out output from them like a factory. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses, and they're looking to maximize their strengths from these special individuals. And really, there's a time and place to make it a factory, of course, later on, and this is going to be talked out later on in the article. So to make use of the 1000x engineers, you have to be committed to letting them do their craft, and you can't really expect someone so talented to just fall into line and not challenge you yourself managing them. It makes sense to harness this, so there will be a certain level of freedom needed. And this also transitions to the necessity of chaos and getting something effective and being made. And once that is in place, then you can start to think of efficiency and optimizing it. For a 0 to 1 kind of classic point here is that the ones who are building out here are doing the huge front end work of building a real solution that they can scale up. But it takes all that front end work to even get to the point of optimization there and building the processes around that. And on top of that, this by the DoD has had a hard time innovating themselves because they try to box this whole path linearly when in reality it's going to be chaotic. And that's really the opposite of the culture of the Army, if you think about it. And also kind of earlier on, too, we talked about this in the point of the artist colony over the factory, and he talks about harnessing these superpowers of these engineers. It really gets philosophical about accepting your weaknesses and not denying them, as well as the crazy example here where Sankar was asked to answer which agency is the most behind technologically in adoption, and he answered it. And then the next day, they got all their badges deactivated the next morning, and they found out, he probably said the wrong answer there, or he made someone really mad. So playing that political game while being frank as an engineer didn't turn out well in that case, at least for Sankar, but he recognizes now that that's one of his weaknesses. So he goes on to a few more, but essentially Palantir is a unique company with individuals that can't just be cogs in a machine. And obviously this is an intense work environment here, and they're not the normally ran big corporation that you think of, where I know personally for myself, it's not for me, but I don't mind being an investor and leveraging the folks who do want to work there and build this environment because they know they're making a big difference, because I know it does take extreme individuals to build extreme things. So everyone's got their own opinions on the workplace culture stuff. So let me know your thoughts below, and I'll see you in the next video.